books.
Really?
And she's like a really good friend of mine.
Speaking of nerdy, it's a time for another Lone Wolves podcast.
Speaking of nerdy and cookies.
Yeah. Are you hungry? Why are we talking about cookies?
I'm always hungry, Drew. I'm always hungry. I'm Lauren Blitzer-Wright, and this is the State of Music and Tech, Lone Wolves podcast.
And I'm Drew Thurlow, and it wouldn't be a Lone Wolves podcast if we weren't to bring up streaming.
Of course, and music and rights and cookies.
Right. Okay, I'm not sure about that last one, but I'm sure this is going somewhere. So we've talked about how streaming is slowing.
Yep.
And that means that labels are going to have to find other ways to increase their double-digit growth year-over-year market share.
Right.
And their growth, year-over-year double-digit growth, rather. And one of the things that they're doing is not letting music be used in ways that they kind of were willing to look the other way.
Right.
Or letting people use music in ways that are kind of falling through the cracks that might be monetizable.
And I think and I know we're talking about social media, but over the past 10 years, there's obviously been a huge spike in growth of social media with TikTok coming into the mix. There was obviously MySpace, Facebook, all of that. But I think, it has now taken over to a point where you can't ignore if music is being used in an improper way. And like you said, with this idea that, okay, we need to capture, there's value here and we need to capture it in every way possible. And if somebody's using it in a way that they should be paying us, we're probably going to go after it now.
Yeah. So that's what we're talking about.
That's the cookie thing.
Yeah. The phenomenon of music being used in ways that were not really clearly defined, or maybe they weren't really licensing structures in place, or were not laws. I remember when I was at Pandora and running the music team, and we were syncing music to be used for branded content. There was no marketplace yet for how to use music in branded content in a digital environment.
Right.
And then this kind of $250 per side for every 6 months usage or year, that kind of emerged a little bit as a kind of back of the envelope custom content. Maybe that was going to be but it was never formalized.
No, blanket licensing.
Yeah, and then we started to do some. And then social media exploded, and it's been this gray area. Can you use music on TikTok without a license? Well, no.
Correct.
But
and it's a gray area too, because I think it's easy to turn a blind eye when you also rely on those platforms to increase your streams and to make catalog pop again. There's no reason why that a guy holding the back of a truck with a thing of cranberry juice would make a Fleetwood Mac song 200%, jump in streams. It's a very complicated relationship.
And you're right. The tension between promotion and marketing and monetization and commercialization has been something that we've all dealt with in music for a long time. Do you give away music on MySpace for free, hoping to convert someone to a fan so then they stream it or buy it later?
Right. And you put value to that.
Yeah.
You can't.
So this is coming up now more than ever. But there was a big story recently that you were talking about in the Daily Drop. Plug for the Daily Drop. On one particular company where now it's been high-profile lawsuits. So tell us a little bit about that.
So Crumbl Cookies has been using tracks in their social media posts and with different influencers that they pay to get the word out there about their cookies. They're a cookie company that have done Kardashian specialized cookies. They have lines around the block. I've never had one. I heard they're very doughy. I actually watched a video of somebody eating them and not liking them. That doesn't matter at all to this podcast, but the Warner actually is going after Crumbl because they were using Taylor Swift track and another artist that I don't want to say the wrong artist, but you can't put a track in content that's getting millions of views. And I think this is now high profile because Crumbl is looking to sell for $2 billion.
Okay.
So you can't just, you have to attribute some of that success to the music that you put in that you didn't pay for.
Right.
So, this was a big thing at Sony. We had interfaced with a company, it was around tourism and hotels. I don't want to say specifically, but they came to us and were basically saying, we want to help you with some of your emerging tracks or your tracks that you need a bump in streams. We're going to put them in our videos and you're going to pay us to put your music in our videos on Instagram. And we were like, wait, what? I'm sorry. I think they thought, and this is also the ignorance behind music, the value of music, who needs to be paid out, how you can use music on social media. they thought that they were doing us a favor and promoting by promoting the music on their channels that had millions of views, not knowing that we were seeing it on the other side. You're using our music to promote your videos.
Yeah.
Why would we be paying you? It doesn't make any sense. So there's that miseducation, and also it's been happening for a long time.
Yes, it has.
Being used.
And now the industry's in a place where they're no longer willing to overlook this, because the streaming growth is slowing, and they're not in the mood to let pennies go by without them.
It's also not fair.
It's also
there's songwriters. There's so many rights.
Yeah, there's
that aren't getting paid.
There's two reasons as to why people might use music on social media. Main reasons why they might use it improperly. Number one, they don't know.
Right.
They just
to cut you off for a second, just to be clear for people who don't understand, if you have a personal account on Instagram, there's pre-cleared music on there. So you can, when you type it in, it's all that music has deals with all of the all the labels and artists where they're getting paid out properly. If you're a brand, you have set music in there, but it is royalty free. Usually it's nothing you recognize, and you can't use tracks unless you pre-license it and then embed it in the video that you're going to post.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, that's a good distinction. And there is something on TikTok, especially called the CML, the Commercial Music Library, where for brands, they have pre-cleared some music for these brands. But it's not really stuff you'd recognize. It's
like some instrumentals too. It's
a little higher quality than just straight library music. Some of this is like independent music, but it's not the defining music of our era that was really drives.
If you want Lovely Day on your...
Exactly.
You're not getting it.
Yeah, exactly. So there's two reasons why people would use it improperly. Number one is they don't really know. Mm-hmm. They think they don't understand about licensing. And number two is that it's really hard to clear, and it's really annoying.
It's expensive.
It can be expensive. It's also, you need clearance from all the songwriters. You need mechanical and published performance clearance on songwriters. And modern pop songs can have up to 10 songwriters. You need clearance from all them. You need clearance from
samples that are in there too.
You need clearance from the samples and the original content holders there. You need the master side or the label clearance. And we're talking about campaigns that sometimes need to get up in an hour because it's social media. Yeah. You're taking advantage of a moment. And sometimes those clearance processes can take weeks or days or even months. So if you're one of this brand, you want to take advantage of this, you don't have an apparatus really to do that. So it's definitely a real problem in the industry. And we're going to talk to Faris from Cipher Music in a bit, a company that's trying to solve this problem. And he can tell us a little bit more about the ecosystem and the challenges. But it is a real problem, because if brands want to be able to take advantage of this, they don't have the apparatus to clear music properly, quickly. And that doesn't really work in a social media context or environment.
And it doesn't work in like the culture that we're in, which is like fast moving. What's news this morning is already not news this afternoon. Like you have to be able to turn around quickly. And the point of social media in this digital age is that you can do that. But if you can't automate clearances quickly, like have a system set up where like if a company is in this revenue range, annual revenue range, they're going to pay X amount for that post. Like that stuff doesn't really exist.
No, it doesn't. And some of the brand, like Crumbl cookie is the example, but some of the other brands that have been sued by rights holders in the last year or two, the NBA or major hotel brands. These aren't mom and pop Etsy stores. These are like massive multinational corporations who aren't clearing music properly. One of my clients for a while was the NHL, the hockey league. They had the same problem. They weren't clearing music properly. And part of the reason why I was working with them was to help them do that. But it's a real problem that needs a solution.
Do you think, so I read in the Crumbl article that there was a cease and desist a few times and they didn't. So
really,
I think that, sometimes brands will not know and then it will culminate to this point where they're getting sued. But there's other brands that do know and they're doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And that feels like, if you're up for sale for $2 billion, why don't you support the creative community too? And, this cookie company was a startup at one point. They had one location and now they have thousands. Like, pay forward.
Yeah. So I wonder, in that context, if a company scales and gets big enough, the person who's the community manager or someone who's running a social feed, I wonder how divorced they are from the general counsel.
Right.
Who probably not trickling down to that level.
At this point, like then there's something wrong with the internal workings of that company, because you have to be like, news alert, we can't do that. Yeah. That's because this is going to be they have Warner has the resources to go after them. They have internal counsel, they can hire out external counsel, but it's not okay.
No, So we're going to bring Faris from Cipher on to talk a little bit about this, someone who works very closely in this space and is a lot more aware of the nuances. So Faris, welcome to the Lone Wolves podcast. We'd love to hear a little bit about yourself and what you're building at Cipher.
Thanks for having me. At Cipher, we're building a marketplace to license out songs through microsyncs for social media in the new era of social media, where short form content dominates on platforms like TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, and many more.
And what are you seeing when brands can properly license this music? And then the second part of my question is, it's obviously been really hard, and we touched on all the clearances required. So how can this become a solution? Because the industry needs the revenue, and brands obviously need real music to use in their advertising campaigns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Like you said, brands want mainstream and commercial music for their short form content. They're trying to make videos that look like UGC videos. They want to be relatable, and they want to tap into the zeitgeist and these cultural moments. And on apps like TikTok and Instagram Reels, the only way to do that is through music from the music industry and not stock music or royalty free stuff. So the challenge is that nobody has figured out a way to make a low price point for the social media managers work, because social media budgets are very different to traditional sync and marketing budgets. And despite the volume being there hasn't been anyone that's incentivized everyone to get all the ducks in a row to sync it out and clear it, so that way a lot of brands can be using it at the same time. And that's what we're aiming to build at Cipher. And that's what we've been doing so far.
And then what do you think, like, the biggest challenges for not only you, but this whole system, right? So how do you speed up the timelines? How do you find the relevant music? How do you partner that with the brands and what they're looking for?
And how do you scale that too?
Yeah, how do you scale it?
So I think the biggest challenge is knowing when to tap into the viral moment that you're experiencing. But there are ways to expedite that and make it faster. One factor I always take into account with labels is that a lot of times a song's viral moment is not organic. You know, marketing teams at labels and publishers, they're paying influencers and they're turning it into a viral moment. And so if you can plan that out in advance and coordinate that with your sync team to get all the clearances ready so that when your song is viral, you can sync it out, that helps you reach scale much faster. Because now when the song is viral, you don't have to think, oh my God, I have to reach out to the 3 other publishers and the 10 other songwriters at once. You can coordinate and plan that out way in advance for you to be able to do that. And then general pre-clearances on regular syncs even are good, because sometimes songs can go viral on social media because they were synced to a movie and the soundtrack really resonated with audiences. And so if you're a label and you know that your song is going to be synced to a very big climactic scene in a movie, like, for example, Murder on the Dance Floor with Saltburn, or Running Up That Hill with Stranger Things, if you know that and you get a good sense that those are going to be iconic moments, then it's smart to preemptively pre-clear all of that, so that way when it does go viral, you can then monetize those syncs on TikTok much faster.
Do you think that approaching catalog groups would be a good way to start or to scale? Just, I know sometimes frontline songs and artists it's a little bit more one-off, but catalog, in bulk might be a good thing to do.
Absolutely. As long as you're strategic about the catalog that you're trying to license out, it needs to be recognizable. It needs to be something that's going to resonate with not only the brands themselves, but also the brand's followers. So that way, the content that they're making means something and it becomes clever and witty and culturally relevant.
No, for sure. Because I mean, they do these like discovery videos for Gen Z where they're hearing like Phil Collins for the first time. And they're like, oh my God, this dude is sick. And it's like, this blows up. And you're just like, okay, you could predict anniversary moments and soundtracks, but like that stuff, you can't. So it's like, how do you kind of get ahead of that? I always think about it in the catalog space because those are the things that always surprise me.
Well, I think at that point, when those moments happen spontaneously, it's less about being prepared and more about being ready to move fast.
Yeah.
And raising awareness in the music industry that kind of virality can happen overnight. So that way, when it does happen, when people discover Phil Collins and they hear that iconic drum solo,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, everyone that has the rights to that song, all the rights holders involved, are actually ready to say, actually, yes, good to go. Let's clear this and let's get people using it so that way everyone can monetize on this much faster.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, though, that's one of those viral moments that might be able to be forecasted or planned at least. So if you're, I don't know who owns, is it Universal who owns Phil Collins? If Universal Music Enterprises or Sony Legacy or the Warner equivalent, if they are planning a campaign for an anniversary or to reintroduce this catalog artist to Gen Z, it sounds like it should be part of their workflow to get this song cleared for social media usage so you can turbocharge that viral moment.
Yeah.
And I wonder, Faris, if you're seeing that kind of process become more and more part of labels' thinkings.
It absolutely is, but I think the priority is a little misplaced right now because they're starting to pre-clear it for things like the CML on TikTok, their commercial music library. But the problem with doing that is that you're making your song completely free and you're waiting and hoping to anticipate for a viral moment to happen before you even see a cent out of any of the royalties that come there. What feels more strategic is when you go through that same pre-clearance, but instead so that you can monetize it instantly rather than just hoping and waiting that, it accumulates the 100 million views that you need before TikTok even gives you anything.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the CML, the commercial music library on TikTok, and why major rights holders aren't really putting their content in it. And it's, I don't, maybe you know, Faris, like if someone's using your song in the CML, I think you're getting paid out more like a DSP rate, right, than an actual sync license rate. So if you're Phil Collins's team, why would you downgrade or de-emphasize your music by putting it in the CML when you're going to get paid such a small rate? Like, don't bother.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And at that point, that rate with each song or artist is negotiated one-to-one with your distributor. So TikTok doesn't actually operate like a typical DSP where they just have their standard rate for most of their artists that they then distribute. Every time you want to upload your song to the CML, your distributor agrees on a royalty rate for you. And so it's up to you and how much you trust that distributor to get the best deal for you. And even then, it's cents on cents on the dollar. So it's a very tough trade-off to me, especially when at that point you can get to a point where millions of brands are using your song all at the same time, not just millions of normal creators.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah. What do you, for the next like 6 to 12 months, what do you see your focus being?
Our focus at this point is on helping brands out as much as possible, whether that's auditing their social media profiles so that they make sure that they're good, preemptively telling them, there's a library of songs that are ready and legally cleared, and you can just get it instantly at an affordable rate for you. And then on the rights holder side and the music industry side, just raising awareness at the sheer volume of demand that's out there. There are millions of brands that have budget, most importantly, and are willing to spend it on the most mainstream and recognizable songs in the world. And this is a unique opportunity because on TikTok and Instagram, what I always tell people, these apps structurally incorporate music into the technology. There's a sound icon at the bottom right of every post where you can click and you can see everyone else that's using that song. And that kind of structural goes at the time when people really used to advertise on those platforms back then. Music now has a lot of leverage in the content that brands are making, and the onus is on the industry to really take advantage and capitalize on it, because for a lot of these marketers, they consider music to be 50% of their asset, or if not more. So given how important it is, it's good to not necessarily open up the floodgates, but make it more accessible, build a better relationship with the people that are paying you for your music, and not unnecessarily burn bridges when all they want to do is just use the songs at the end of the day.
Completely.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Crumbl cookie.
Yeah.
Crumbl cookie yesterday, exactly.
Woo. And they're not the only one.
No.
They haven't been the first, and they're not going to be the last.
No.
But that's really insightful. So thank you, Faris, for joining us.
Thanks so much.
And thanks everyone for being a dedicated listener to the Lone List podcast.
Like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.